Be sure to subscribe and help get this video to 2,000 likes.
Not just cartoons.
We're NickToons.
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 When you mention Nickelodeon to people who grew up in the early 2000s, the first two shows that come to people's mind are usually SpongeBob and the Fairly OddParents. While Avatar is probably the best show to come out of Nickelodeon, you can't deny the legacy of these two series. The general consensus seems to be, they were great. Until they weren't. SpongeBob premiered all the way back in May of 1999 and is still making new episodes today. In its near quarter-century run, SpongeBob has had over 500 episodes over 13 seasons, including 3 feature films, a Tony Award-winning musical, and a handful of spin-offs we collectively agree not to talk about. Fairly OddParents premiered 2 years later in March of 2001 after debuting as a series of shorts on Oh Yeah Cartoons. The show ran for nearly 300 episodes over the course of 16 years. In addition to being on Nickelodeon, these two shows had a fair amount in common. They're the two longest-running Nicktoons, they were both massive successes for the network, and they both should have ended after the films that were clearly intended to serve as series finales. Look, I love SpongeBob as much as the next person, but at some point you have to know when enough is enough. Thankfully, Fairly OddParents was put out of its misery after its 10th season got bumped to NickToons in 2017. While both shows have overstayed their welcome, I've always loved their villains. Even if you've come to despise both these shows, you can't deny how many awesome villains they've created. Bubble Bass, Vicky, the Flying Dutchman, Mr. Crocker, the Dirty Bubble, Rayman, the Negachin, and countless others. But the two villains I want to take a look at are Plankton and Dinkleberg. Two characters who seemingly have nothing in common aside from their first names being Sheldon.
Sheldon.
Yes, that's my first name.
Sheldon!
Will you please?
Geez, someone on Nickelodeon really hates guys named Sheldon. On one hand, you have Plankton, a single-celled organism whose ambitions are literally bigger than his brain. His decades-spanning feud with Eugene Krabs is the stuff of legends, with his countless failed attempts to steal the Krabby Patty secret formula. Then you have someone like Dinkleberg, who is the polar opposite of Plankton. Sure, he can be passive-aggressive at times with how he flaunts his wealth, but he's never outright malicious towards his neighbors. As far as Dinkleberg is concerned, Mr. Turner and him are best friends. Hell, he even gave the man a kidney. While both Sheldons tended to follow a villain of the week formula, they each had an episode that took their villain arcs in a completely different, but honestly welcome direction. That is until they fumbled the bag and returned everything to the status quo, but I'm getting ahead of myself. In this video, I'll go over both shows, exploring how they advance each villain's arc before ultimately ruining it, as well as how we were robbed of so many great stories that could have been if they had stuck the landing. So let's not waste any more time and jump right into it. The first episode I'll be covering is New Leaf, which aired in 2006 during SpongeBob's infamous 4th season. The episode opens with Plankton waving a white flag, more specifically, with Mr. Krabs watching Plankton wave a white flag. The episode goes out of its way to establish we're watching the story through Mr. Krabs' perspective. Mr. Krabs goes to confront Plankton, who claims he's giving up the chum bucket to turn it into a gift shop. Krabs is rightfully suspicious as he convinced it's just another one of Plankton's schemes to get the secret formula. While SpongeBob and Squidward seem to believe Plankton has turned over a new leaf, Krabs is hellbent to prove it's just a con. The episode starts out clever enough by not showing us things from Plankton's perspective. Compare this to an episode like Fun, where it's made clear from the get-go that Plankton is trying to scam SpongeBob out of the secret formula. Even as SpongeBob seemingly terms him good, we know Plankton is starting from a point of insincerity. But by telling the story only from Krabs' perspective, we as an audience aren't sure if Plankton is being truthful or not. We've seen him pull stunts like this before, the episode even references his past scams. But on the other hand, what if he's being genuine? Plankton makes a compelling case to end his feud with Krabs, and honestly, setting up a gift shop next to the most popular restaurant in town seems like a good business move. However, Krabs is still convinced Plankton is up to no good and goes to confront him. When he fails to get a rise out of him, Krabs snaps and ends up trashing the place. Plankton angrily kicks him out, but not before leaving him with these words.
Can't you understand? I've wasted so much time chasing after you. And now I have something that's mine. And it makes me happy.
That night, Krabs calls Plankton to apologize, and we get one of my favorite scenes in the whole show.
Wasn't right what I done, and I realized I hurt the feelings of someone I care about.
The two meet up for sodas the next day, and Krabs offers Plankton a fresh start on their friendship. We then get a cute montage of the two going to a carnival, which culminates with Eugene giving Plankton the secret formula. But unlike before, this isn't a trick or a ruse. Eugene truly trusts Sheldon, and giving him the formula is his way of solidifying their friendship. The two watch the sunset as their rivalry is put to bed and a new chapter of their lives begins as friends. And then the episode keeps going.
Yeah, baby! I got it.
Surprise, surprise, it turns out Plankton was faking it the whole time.
I never give you the formula.
Why? Why? This was the perfect way to wrap up Plankton's villain arc, and you fucked it up for a cheap closing punchline. Just end their rivalry with a fade to black and move on with the show. This really pisses me off. Just imagine all the great stories we could have gotten with Krabs and Plankton as allies instead of enemies. Stop trying to be Tom and Jerry. We don't need a million Plankton versus Krabs stories because you already gave us the best one in the movie. You did it. You peaked. Know when to end the game.
Watch out, to wing her, she's a proper Juby Jew. Give her a sheet, let her rip the boys to pull her through. You ought to see us running, the wind and blowing free, on a passage from the Dogger Bank to Grey Grimsby.
As frustrating as this episode was, it's nowhere near as bad as our next contender.
Hey, looking good, Turner.
Dinkleberg.
Operation Dinkleberg was the final episode of Fairly OddParents' 7th season, which aired well after the jumping the shark introduction of the show's most infamous infant, Poof, who thankfully isn't in the episode that much. The episode opens with Mr. Turner going about his morning routine. He faces a series of minor inconveniences, all of which he blames on Dinkleberg. Unlike New Leaf, where Krabs' doubt in Plankton feels justified, here it's made abundantly clear just how absurd Mr. Turner's conspiracy is. Even his family is on Dinkleberg's side.
He's a perfectly nice neighbor.
Get away from your mother, Timmy. Dinkleberg's put a computer chip in her woman brain and turned her against us. Dinkleberg, I know you're listening!
Mr. Turner's obsession has reached the point where he's turned his son's whole room into a high-tech surveillance system that would give the CIA a run for their money. Mr. Turner ropes in Timmy to help him catch Dinkleberg being evil. This creates some tension about Timmy not being able to use his fairies when his dad's around, but honestly, it doesn't really matter. After several botched attempts, Timmy's dad decides to sneak in himself and ends up getting caught by Dinkleberg, who is still welcoming and friendly as ever.
I'll give you back your kidney!
Don't be silly, Turner. That's yours to keep.
Mr. Turner seems to have learned his lesson until we get the best twist in the episode.
You're never going home.
Surprise, surprise, it turns out Dinkleberg was actually evil. He admits he's been fucking with Mr. Turner the whole time. Honestly, this is the perfect type of villain. Not someone who tries to take over the world, but someone who goes out of their way just to make your day-to-day life slightly more inconvenient. Timmy uses his fairies to free his dad, who escapes with the satisfaction of knowing his lifelong suspicions about Dinkleberg were right all along. And then the episode keeps going.
Oh, I'm not really evil, Timmy. I just knew how much it meant to your father to think I was evil.
God damn it. Again, how do you fumble the bag this hard? After years of watching Timmy's dad envying his next-door neighbor, this was the perfect twist to pay off a decade-long running gag. None of us who watched the show actually thought Dinkleberg was evil, but by revealing him to be a secret evil mastermind puts his character into a whole new context. This gives older episodes greater rewatch value when you know the seemingly kind-hearted man is actually a mad villain. But no, he just goes back to being the sickeningly sweet neighbor the show forgets exists half the time when they're not shitting out new characters in a desperate grab for ratings.
Whoa, just take it easy, man.
I could spend all day getting mad at these two shows, but after thinking about it for a while, the one question I'm left with is, why? Why would Nick go out of their way to deviate their villains from the norm and tease us with something new and exciting, only to return them to the status quo after 11 minutes? I know both these cartoons are episodic, but even episodic cartoons can have character development. We're used to seeing Plankton as the harebrained villain who's destined to fail. We've seen Dinkleberg as the nosy neighbor who can seemingly never lose. You've shown us you can take these characters in a new direction, so why not commit to it? Think of how many great stories we could have gotten with Dinkleberg as a hardcore villain, or Plankton as a good guy who's not just trying to screw over Mr. Krabs. You can keep the core of both shows the same while giving your secondary characters room to branch out. I'll never understand why long-running shows like these feel the need to keep their characters confined to the initial character traits they were given. We're not going to get confused if Plankton doesn't have an evil scheme in every episode, or if Dinkleberg isn't the good-natured neighbor. The only reason I can think as to why we never got to see these two villains evolve is because of the tried-and-true philosophy that the status quo is God. Everything needs to be simple and reliable, otherwise the show won't make sense. And above all else, the show has to keep going.
There's always more show. I guess until there isn't.
Thanks for watching, everyone. I want to give a shout out to my good friend Parasol.p for designing my cartoon avatar. Go check out his channel and let him know Matt sent you. Make sure to like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments who your favorite cartoon villain is. Were you a Nickelodeon or a Cartoon Network kid? Until next time, thanks again for watching.